Hello, my name is Bryan Malpartida, and today I'm going to be talking about earth contamination, specifically about throwing garbage in the street and its consequences. So, one time I was coming back to school and I got in the bus and I noticed that my biology teacher was there. So, we were talking about a lot of things, specifically school things, but we crossed a river which is called Rio Rimac. And something that is interesting about this river is that at the time it was full of garbage. Like it was completely full of garbage. And every time we crossed that river, the smell was terrible. And so we talked about it, and he mentioned something really interesting to me. He said that he never threw garbage in the streets. He always put the garbage he had in his pocket, and then he waited and threw it in his house where it was supposed to be. But he never did it in the street. So this lesson was something that I have applied all my life until now, and I'm going to keep applying it. And I remember talking about this with my friends, and they would always think like, but it's a small thing, like it's just perhaps a cooking vulture or something like that. But it does matter because it begins with small things. And it was incredible that they didn't know as well about earth pollution, or they didn't know the consequences that it made. So today I hope to encourage you to stop throwing garbage, and I'm going to be talking about the consequences about throwing garbage, like earth contamination. Also, how we need to hold accountable to our community about this topic, and also the example we set to our families. So, something that was said by KJV leader in America study was that 11.5 billion is spent every year to clean up litter. So imagine all that effort that is taken just to clean litter. Imagine if we avoided throwing so much garbage in the streets, how much money would be saved? And what can this money be used for if this happened? Just think about this for a minute. Something that I would like to add is something that was said by the Environmental Protection Agency. Litter makes an area look dirty and uncared for, unpleasant to be in, and less likely to be used and enjoyed by the community. So this is completely true. No one likes to be in a community or in a neighborhood where everything is dirty. No one. Like, take for example the river. The smell was terrible and people lived around the river. So I don't imagine people would like to go there very often. And something that I would like to add is something that was said by the Texas Disposal Systems. They said, litter causes pollution. Researchers estimate that more than 40% of the world's litter is burned in the open air, which can release toxic emissions. So think about this. This is earth contamination. So what happens is that when we throw garbage in the street, it doesn't automatically cause toxic emissions. What happens is that it gathers up so much that it ends up in the place where people just burn it. Like, I would mention this again, in the river, people would often burn the garbage that was there to get rid of it. So there was all sort of things happening there, and it's the perfect example for the consequences that come from throwing garbage in the streets. So, one thing that we can do to avoid throwing garbage in the streets is do community cleanup days. We can gather as a community and just try to clean everything we find in the streets. And people will begin to notice that the community is actually worrying about pollution, worrying about keeping its streets clean. We can also make cleaning the streets, or perhaps avoid throwing garbage in the streets, a family culture, because everything starts at home, and from there is where we can work and teach by example to others. And another thing we can do is to create social norms in our community so that people can actually hold accountable for their actions, because some people may follow what we're trying to share, but some people would just do it and there's no consequence, and they just would never stop. And this will help to be organized as well. Of course, this will take time, but with our efforts, we can help our community hold accountable with our earth. Imagine if all these things happened, we would have clean streets, we will have a healthy earth, and communities will be more likely to be visited, right? Who doesn't want to visit a clean community, a community where the smell is nice, a community that has clean parks, clean places to stay, to hang out with friends? Who doesn't want to do that, right? So I encourage you to share this knowledge with your community, to set the example to your family, and to reflect personally about this topic. Nowadays, are you throwing garbage in the streets? What will you do to avoid throwing garbage in the streets in the future? What will you do to change other people from throwing garbage in the streets? And this is what I wanted to share with you guys today, and my conclusion is that if we stop throwing garbage in the streets, we will have a happy community and a happy earth. Thank you and good night.